Hi everyone, welcome back to my channel. My name is Abiba, and on today's video I'll be sharing you how to draft this beautiful dress. So if it's something you like to know, watch the video to the end and don't forget to subscribe to my channel so that you can see more of my videos. Now the inspiration of this dress was gotten from this white dress. So let's start. Now we need our brown paper and I've marked out my guideline. The half length of this dress is 11 inches. So I'll measure from the tip of shoulder, my shoulder line. Then I'll mark the half length, which is 11 inches, and I'll draw the horizontal line out. Now I'll go back to the shoulder line and mark the shoulder measurement. Now the shoulder of this dress is 11 inches. 11 divided by 2 is going to be 5.5. So I've marked out my 5.5. Now I'm bringing out the neck width. The neck width I'm using for this is 2.7 by 2.7. So that was what I used for the neck width. So I'm bringing out the angle so that I can shape my neck properly. I can shape the neckline. Now I'm bringing out my French curve to curve out the neck of the dress. To curve out the neck of the. Now I'll go back to the shoulder. Slope my shoulder with 0.5 inches. So I'm using 0.5 inches to slope my shoulder. Now I'll measure from that point. I'll measure the armhole. The armhole I'm using for this dress is 5.5. So that's where my armhole line is going to start from. So from my shoulder slope, I measure my armhole. Now I'm going to interpret the bust on the chest. On the armhole line. Then I'm going to draw. I'm trying to check the measurement of the shoulder to make sure it's the correct measurement. Then I'll draw the extension of my shoulder down, the extension of my armhole down. Then we look for the midpoint of the armhole and go in by 0.2 inches. Then I'll connect it with my French curve to the armhole, to the tip of the shoulder, so back to the chest line. Now remember I measured the chest, I interpreted the chest on the armhole line. Now I'm marking the waist measurement. The measurement I measured was so my chest is 6 inches, while the waist is 5.5 inches. So those are the measurements I'm using. Actually, this dress is meant for a 4 years old child. So that's our measurement I took. That's the measurement I took of her. Now I'm done with it. I'm cutting out my pattern. So I'm trying to cut out my pattern pieces. Now once I'm done with the pattern, with the front body, I'll move to the back. I'm done cutting the front. Now I've added, you can see the back, I've added zipper allowance, and I've marked out my guideline for the shoulder and down to the waist. Now I'll interpret the shoulder just the way I did. Interpret the shoulder, armhole, and interpret my measurement on it. On every part, then I've cut out the back too to have my front and back pattern. Now the dress has a tube inside, so it has organza, and the inside is a tube with the material I use inside. So I'm trying to mark where my tube is starting from. So I measured from from the shoulder tip down to the length of what I want. So it's like 1.5 or 1 inches above the chest line. So that's where the tube is starting from. Now I'm trying to fold it. If you have a French curve, you can trace it, but if you don't have, you can just fold your pattern and place it on another brown paper, on another pattern paper, to trace out the tube. I don't want to cut it, so that's why I'm tracing. I've traced out the tube, and you can see I've added the the indication, the one I'm cutting to, the one I'm cutting on fold. I've added it. Now the next thing I'm cutting is the down part, which is flare. The down part of the dress is a flare cut. So the measurement of our waist, I times it by 2. What I got, I divided it by 6.28. So I times it by 2. I got and divided by 6.28. So now I'm trying to mark. So you can see from the tip of the paper, I'm trying to cut out a flare cut. So it was a waist I use because it's a little bit gathered. So I times I waist by 2, then I divide by 6.28, which is our radius for calculating flare. Now I'm done getting the I was able to get the waist. Now I'm trying to get the length of the flare. Now my brown paper is not going to be enough, so I'm just going to mark all what I have on the brown paper. Then when I'm to transfer it on my fabric, I will increase the length. So that's so when I'm transferring it on my brown paper, I'm going to use the accurate length. So this is all I have on the paper, so that's why I'm marking. So if your own paper is bigger than this, you can mark the full length, but because my own is very small, that's why I'm reducing the length. So that when I fold the material, I'm going to just increase the length and cut everything at once. So if you have watched this video to this point, don't forget to like, subscribe to my channel so that you can see more of my videos. Now this is me cutting out the pattern. I'm trying to cut the waistline. So the next thing I'm to do here is, so when I finish it on my material, I'll increase the length. So I'm done cutting out the length, the flare. Now all my patterns are ready for the upper and the lower parts. I have all my pattern, both the inner. So I'm just going to get my material that I'll be using. Now these are the material I'm using for the project. You can see I have a silk material. I have 3 yards of silk material. Yes, because of the flare of the down part. Now the organza 2 is 3 yards. While my lining 2, I use the same 3 yards. Now I have my, you can see my appliques, my zipper, and my thread for sewing. So these are the material I'm using. Now I didn't remember to add hard net. Now I was able to place all the pattern on my material, and I've cut out the, now I'll be showing you now what I did. Now the tube inside is the silk and the lining I cut out for. So I cut one. Now for the back too, you can see I cut the silk and the lining for the dress. Now for the full shoulder to waist, it was organza I cut for this, so I cut it 2-2. Now the reason why I cut 2 is because one is serving as a lining and one is serving as the main fabric. So that was why I cut 2 of it. You can see the back is having 4 pieces. So I'm going to be using it to turn the neckline, and my armhole, because it's a harmless dress. So I'm going to be, yes, it's just having a fabric extension. Now you can see the down parts. I've cut out my organza for the flare, and I have increased the length, yes, the length, the real length of the material, and the real length of the dress I'm using. Yeah, you can see where my pattern, my brown paper stopped, so I increased the length for both the silk material and the organza I'm using. And note, the organza is 2 inches longer than the real fabric. Yes, is 2 inches longer than the silk fabric. The reason why is because it's on it. Now this is my lining. Now the lining is not the same length with the silk. I reduced it with 5 inches, and this is my net cut out straight. So all my patterns I'm going to, because I cut it on a 360 flake cut, so I'm going to open one side, which is going to serve as where the zipper is going to be having, where I'll be having my opening at the back part. Now this is me trying to check all my fabrics and make sure they are equal, anyone is not missing. So I'm also opening the organza on one side of it because it's a 360 flare. So I'm opening one side from it. Now I'm done, and these are my pieces. These are my pattern. Now I want to start joining the fabric. Now you can see I have two organza for the front. One is the main fabric and the other one is the lining. So I'm going to stitch it at the neckline. So that's, we started the stitching process. Now for the tube inside, I'll be stitching both the silk and the lining together. Yes, I'll be turning it at also the neckline, which is from the chest line now. Yes, I'll be stitching it, and both the front and the back, everything is neat and well stitched. So the next thing now is I've joined the tube inside, and I've pressed my material. Yes, you can see both the front and the back. I've joined them. Mm, I've joined them, trying to align them together. Yes, I'm trying to check which one is for which side. So please always check your material so that you will not go and sew the right hand side to the left hand side. So that's what I'm trying to do here. I'm just trying to align my fabric. Now for the organza, I've joined, I told you one is serving as lining and one is serving as the main fabric. So I've joined them together. Now the next thing is to join it at the armhole line and at the shoulder tip. So that's the next thing I'm doing. Join the armhole, but the first one I did was just to join the armhole, then come back later and join the, now I've joined the tube and the fabric. Yes, you can see the tube and the fabric. I've inserted the tube inside the organza and I've stitched it down at the side seam so that my material will be in one place. And I've turned the armhole inside. Yes, I've turned ahead and turned the armhole inside. Now I'm to join it at the shoulder tip. So I'm going to insert the front to the back. So I'm going to insert the front to the back and I'm going to stitch it at that point. So this is stitching stitching. Yes, this is what I did just to stitch it. I'm done stitching that. Now for the sleeve, like the cape on it, the drape on the dress. So this is the drape is coming from front to the back. So this is me. I've measured measurement for my client. I've measured the front and the back drape. I've cut out the material and added hasty to it so that, because I'm working with silk, so it can be very frustrating, so I added hasty to it to stabilize the fabric, and I've gone ahead to sew it inside and turn it and press. So I'm going to turn it. Now I've done it, and you can see me marking the position where it's to be attached. Now from the center tip of the dress, a distance of half inches was left before I started placing the drape and plating it on it, just like I saw from the design inspiration. So I'm doing exactly what they did at that point. So this is me stitching it down, and I'm done stitching the two. The next thing is to take it to my machine and sew them together. You can see it will I hold it with pin at the shoulder tip, so I'm going to tack it later. Now now to the lining of the down part, you mark 2 inches away from the waistline. Yes, you don't join it exactly from the waistline, you mark it because it has a itchy effect. So normally it doesn't start at the waistline, so you come down from the waistline like 2 inches or 3 inches is okay. Then I'm going to be pleating my net on it. Now this is me making gathers on the silk, the lower part of the fabric, the lower part of the dress. I'm making gathers stitch on the lower parts of the dress. So this is the silk. Um, Now to make this gather, you just change the stitch length of your machine to 5 inches, and you start by not reinforcing on the yes, you don't reverse on the machine from beginning to the end, and make sure your hand is very straight and very smooth so that now this is me trying to make gathers on the organza too, because the organza and the silk inside everything is rubber. I've made my gathers and I'm pulling it to get the exact waistline. um I'm going to now I've stitched the two I'm going to stitch the two together, both the silk and the organza. I'm stitching them together. Yes, I'm stitching the organza and the silk together. Now, now I'm done stitching the two together. Yes, my organ. Now I'm to stitch it to the upper parts. I'm stitching both the upper part and the lower part together, joining it at the waistline. So I'm joining it at the waistline. You need to be very careful here so that your fabric, your hand need to be very straight. Yes, so I'm done stitching the upper and the lower part together. So this is what I have. This is what it's looking like at the good side of the material. This is how it's looking like. Now the next thing is to do the same thing on the lining of the upper part and the lining of the lower part. Yes, then attach it. I got I you know I showed I told you that I'm going to do Okay, yes, I'm done doing that. Then the next thing is I'm fixing my zip. I'm done fixing the zip. Now this is the front look of the dress. This is the front view of the dress. This is how it's looking, and this is the back view. You can see my invisible is looking very invisible. Yes, and everything is sewn inside. The inside is looking very neat. Yes, you can't see any rough edges inside. So now I'm just trying to check my zip and make sure it's working properly. And you can see the front view. This is how it's looking. Now the next thing is to apply my appliques on it. So this my appliques I actually use 360 B3600 B6000 glue to glue it to the fabric. Now I'm done that. The next thing is to overlock the silk, and you can overlock it or you fold it just twice. So I'm overlocking it so I can just go to my lock stitch machine and just fold it once. This is me overlocking the down part of the dress. So if you have watched this video to this point, what are you waiting for? Don't forget to support me by hitting the subscribe button, like, make comment so that you can see more of my videos. Now I'm done making the overlock. So the next thing is to go to my straight sewing machine and just fold it once and stitch it. Yes, I'm just going to fold it once and I'm going to stitch everything together. Now I'm done doing. This is me trying to fold the down part. I'm trying to fold it. Mm, just trying to sew it and fold everything so that everything will be very neat. And this is, I'm done folding it. I'm folding the down part of the dress. Now when I was making this bow, my camera went off, so I was done. It was after I was making the bow I realized my camera was off. So the bowl is coming at the back, so it's going to cover the half length of the back. Now I'm going to tack it on one side, and on the other side I'm going to use a press button. Yes, so that when she's going to wear it, we're going to zip it, and after zipping she wears them, zip it back and use our press button to hold the bow at the back. So you can see I've done applying both the front and the back appliques. Yes, so the next thing is just to tack my bow at this back. I'll tack it on the left hand side, and on my right hand side I'll just use. Thanks for watching. Don't forget to subscribe.